The world is not as it appears to be. This is nothing new. Many people have reflected, have talked about this in different ways. I've been really noodling about making a video. My history in making videos it started primarily, actually the very first impulse I had about making videos on YouTube was to communicate something about the work that I make as a painter. You can go through my videos and see I often use my paintings in the back. Well, they're there anyway, but I talk about painting. That was my first impulse to my desire in 2009 to make videos based on a it wasn't something I thought out clearly, but looking back on it, it was to communicate an aspect of myself that may actually have significance to someone else. And this wasn't about informing you or anyone of anything. It was something within me that has always been there, I think, very early on, for whatever reason, to conjure and dig up something within myself that I had not perceived, possibly, that was dormant, that was asleep. This is why I think the whole art thing is so curious and interesting, because fundamentally the beauty in making a painting is that it reveals something about myself, and what extends that revelation, if it extends to someone else, this is quite elegant and amazing. So you see, there is a real distinction between providing information about something and giving something of oneself that may have relevance. I've talked about this in terms of the YouTube community, how I feel it's largely fluff and at best entertainment, but nothing of substance that feeds me. Because information necessarily is not the trough I want to drink from. Information is kind of like, I suppose, all the paints that I have on my palette, on my table. What I suppose that I can make use of in some way. But maybe not even that much, because paint is very essential. The material itself is, yeah, probably not quite exactly the analogy that is fitting, but it kind of gives you a sense of why I have such why I question this continuous inundation with facts and figures and truth. People love the truth, which is such a moving target. So I'm going to come. Okay, I've been debating whether or not to do this, and it has nothing to do with surveillance and if there is all this, there is surveillance big time. It's even face recognition, all that kind of stuff is happening. We are in very perilous times from the point of view that the world, as we understand it to be wholesome and balanced, is not functioning, is being abandoned. A world that is not what it appears to be is actually appearing to be a certain way in certainty. All right. The world, as we experience it, in the sense of it isn't what it appears to be, has shifted into certainty. This is why I dislike certainty. I'm not a big fan of people that are certain. I enjoy the kerfuffle with eternity that I have, because eternity is anything but certain in the way it represents itself to me. This kind of thinking makes sense if you're creative in any form. That a person that is creative is not lodged into something that has to be a certain way. There is possibility, the possibility of things. And I'm going to get to why I'm going to do this video. I was debating, and it's a we are now in a very convenient crisis that facilitates certainty, the thing that we should run away from. So it's in a sense a mission accomplished, like Baby Bush standing on the boat, proclaiming mission accomplished. Well, I can feel this sense of gloating success, the way Baby Bush had gloating success, how significantly further this reality has proceeded toward what I consider to be our demise in terms of this aspect of certainty, that people need to embrace certainty. We create circumstances around us and then try to fix it and make it okay and make it certain, like this event now, this health event, which has provided, which is creating a reality that has minimized possibilities. In other words, this is so dangerous in terms of the spirit that makes us who we are. It's like, what makes me go? There is a beautiful saying in Kabbalah, in the Song of Songs, I'm stripped of the symbols that have disguised me, which goes along with the idea, my peace is uncertainty. These are phrases that those who study numbers are, I suppose they have value, like this Zach Hubbard guy or Cat Eye, that look at numbers purely from an analytic point of view. But if you look at Kabbalah through a kind of creative storytelling, like the Bible is a creative storytelling, and you cannot take this thing literally. It has to be understood like those analytic types like Hubbard or Cat Eye. I don't think they like each other, but it's a limited way of understanding symbols. Numbers are not symbols in Kabbalah. They literally they are like the letters, rather, not the numbers. The letters and numbers are, every letter is a number, but the letters physically represent that which they communicate. Like in Shakespeare, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. You don't have to call it a rose to get the effect. And those letters are literally like that. To understand that alphabet is so complex and difficult. To reduce it just to a word or a number or a sequence of numbers like equations, yes, they can indicate, but the true understanding in this is a creative, it challenges some creative aspect within us. So this is really what has always interested me right from the beginning that I was doing videos. I wanted to create a context about what it is that we're facing. Okay, so I'm going to get into this crisis a little bit now. And it started for me, serious, like super duper wake up time for me was when Fukushima blew up. I think this is still the most significant event. It surpasses all catastrophes in the history of our existence because the toxicities out of this plant are, well, they're going to go on for thousands and thousands of years. It's something we can't stop. So do we have, if we're in fact on a limited surface, like a ball that we live on is limited, we can't run away. And this whole fantasy, this Elon Musk crap and Mars and the trips to the moon and Mars and all this hooey is in order for us to feel less anxious about being in a confined space. Hence the ball. The ball idea makes sense because it fundamentally creates the notion of a confined space that we can't get out of. Wouldn't it be curious if we in fact could get out of this confined space, and for some reason we've been conditioned to feel this way or believe this way, whereas there are the anomalies, for example, like Antarctica. How can nations that hate each other agree on Antarctica? This makes no sense. There's so many anomalies when you look at the reality, the world as it appears and is not really what it appears to be. Countries go to war with each other, but they have no problem agreeing on how to deal with Antarctica, and nobody goes to Antarctica. This is a red flag, obviously. This is a red flag. Something isn't quite right. But anyway, so I've covered this many times, Fukushima, and this is a real issue. This is not a fabrication. Now, this health issue, this supposed virus, I gave myself some time before I made a comment on this because I wanted to see the reports, what comes back, the information. Yeah, I listen to information, what comes back, to come to a conclusion, to come to a sensibility, to have an understanding. And I said to myself, I'm going to wait 2 or 3 weeks because there's certain things that need to happen. One is based on the projections and all the things that are being bandied about, and all the experts coming out and saying, hunker down, we're in for a 2-week period. Well, this is all a bunch of hooey, because you're not going to shut the world down. And this is phenomenal, people, when you think about it, that the exact same conditions exist, like I've said, in museums in Australia and Indonesia and North America and Europe are all showing the same work. This is peculiar. I know people will say, no, it's just how, the spirit of the time is reflected. Well, that may be so, but there are always other views. There are other possibilities which are not being considered. It's the similar work that is being produced everywhere. So art has been coerced, seduced, hijacked for whatever. People always like to get paid. People like to get acknowledged and be stars and all that kind of feeling. This is all instrumental in artists giving up their birthright for some kind of other ulterior motive or gain. I understand this, but it still does not, for me, explain why everything is the same. Why are all the work that is being promoted and exhibited the same? And when this health crisis hit, starting in China, which is just from a psychological point of view, it's the right place to start, because China has, for as far as I remember and know, has been terribly despotic in terms of the control over a large population. So China seems to be very capable of controlling a really large population. So the Bernays people, like the people that are into understanding how to manufacture and manipulate and all this kind of stuff, have a good eye on China. So it's a testing ground to see how it worked. And it worked from what we understand. I'm just going by what I'm being told, and I don't even know how true all this stuff is. We don't really know. It's like, yeah, we went to the moon, right? So we're told, and we just regurgitate shit without reflecting on it and trying to understand, because it's something we can't prove. No one personally, like I can't prove that they went or they didn't go, but we regurgitate this shit because there is some kind of consensual movement to eliminate the uncertainty. We want certainty about everything. How about just wondering and asking questions? There's nothing wrong with that. And if they did go, fabulous. If they didn't go, not so fabulous, because it says the world is not what it appears to be, like I started. All right. So I wanted to wait a little while before making my comments. And I'm not saying the word that is being used all the time, like 9/11 and terrorism, all those nasty terrorists everywhere. It was an endless war, still going on a presumed event of a guy with a beard in a cave bringing down 2 buildings, and another one actually fell for no reason whatsoever. This is all so clearly fabricated. These are just so, I mean, maybe not at the time when it first happened, we're overwhelmed by the stuff, the information coming at us, but it's been a long time. It's been like 19 years, which is interesting. The 19-year event. It's like in every 19 years, isn't there a moon cycle that is exactly the same every 19 years? It fits into the Zachary Hubbard gematria kind of analysis, which I appreciate. But it falls short of understanding what it is that I'm capable of and how I'm able to resist the manipulation. This is, I think, what the wholesome part of this YouTube thing is, how people alert each other to themselves, how they function within a world that is not what it appears to be. This is a principle on giving people feeling exalted or just excited about giving information, which is such a great feeling to say, hey, it's not what it appears to be. And then to resort to this, to these proclamations and this dogma about what it really is. This is where it falls short for me. And this is unfortunately what happens. And then religious types, you kind of replace consensual religion with your own religion of fact and truth and all that, and it becomes bogged down. So I'm bogged down by virtually every channel, as much as I appreciate things coming at me, information like the paints I have on my table, but they're not going to make a painting. So I'm interested in how to conjure that image on a surface using the materials available to me to communicate something of value. Well, primarily to discover something about myself, and possibly this has some value to you. So you look at a painting and you say, hey, I really like that, or that's stupid, or why are you doing this? Or whether it's negative or positive, it has an effect. This is ultimately what encourages me to continue, the response in other people, but primarily I do it to find out about myself. Okay, anyway, so this particular convenient crisis that we're in now has what I said a couple of weeks back in my last video. I said, what really is disturbing about this, how the response is homogenous. It's like it's a worldwide response. So this has never really happened, other than, I suppose, if you consider world wars. The Second World War, they weren't really they were world wars, but there were many areas unaffected. Now, this is escalated to the point where everyone on Earth is affected by the ordinances and decrees about this crisis. And this gives me great pause, to say the least, and I'm convinced this is once more an event that has created a circumstance that destroys the feeling of possibility within us. And this is the greatest threat to our existence, that we capitulate to an external force that directs us in a certain way. This is dangerous. This is something that many people have talked about. I talk about it from the point of view that I am familiar with, which is inspiration. It's not information, it's inspiration. And if you're inspired by something that somebody tells you, well, okay, good. But anybody can say so many different things that may or may not apply. Okay, fine. I suppose this is a personal judgment, but for me personally, I have absolutely, virtually zero interest in people just spouting the information, something like a usual suspect, somebody like an Alex Jones, who's a joke, complete joke, or the SGT report. These people have such a dog in the fight for their dogma. It's like the dogma, the dog in the fight dogma. This comes through all the time. It's so insidious. Now, I do listen to occasionally, you say, hey, you mentioned this, why do you bother listening? Because I understand things about myself, how not to be, and some things are even valuable. I mean, some stuff comes across and I chew on it. He gives me something to feed on, but it's so minimal. So, okay, what's my point? My point today, and I hesitated to do this because I'm not entirely, I wasn't entirely convinced. I had grave suspicions about the proclamations on this health issue, on this health crisis, because I saw the response being the same everywhere. This is the indicator that something isn't right, because we're not like that. We're not, in our essence, we're not ritualistic, habitual creatures. We're curious. Children are curious. This is something that gets hammered out of children. This is something that culture and civilization has managed to accomplish, mission accomplished, to hammer the curiosity out of a young soul, somebody developing in themselves, discovering things for themselves. It doesn't mean that the discoveries like tying your shoelace is entirely original, but it is certainly original to the child that figures out how to tie their shoelace and feels an epiphany. These are experiences that need to be promoted and understood, not in terms of what we have understood, like we've gone there, done that, been there, but for somebody that hasn't, and to encourage and to foster this feeling of curiosity in a person. And this is being completely squelched now. I was out buying some supplies. I'm doing some framing. I'm making frames for a show. I'm taking this opportunity to frame. See, I'm making boxes for a series of paintings based on what I call there's like Muhammad Ali back there. They're portraits I call ID. You can find them if you want to look at my ID portraits. You just look on my channel. You'll see the paintings. I lost my point. Okay, so I went. Oh yeah, I went to the my supplier, and the level of fear and terror around this circumstance, and how extraordinary the measures are. Like people have said, the cure is worse than the disease, and this, in fact, will manifest itself very quickly. This will go on. I said, there are certain things will be opened up again, but there are going to be pivotal ordinances and directives that will stay in place, kind of like the Income Tax Act was not removed because it was supposedly there to get funds for the war effort, and then after the war was over, the income tax stayed. One of the most repressive rules amongst in a society is to tax accomplishments, like earnings, like you do something good and you're punished for it because you have to, oh no, you got to pay for what it is that you've accomplished or have understood. Whatever it is you can contribute, your service is being taken away from. I have no problem with usury taxes, but income tax is a whole other story. So some of this will actually continue to stay. Some of these restrictions, and my suspicion, this is my suspicion, my opinion, my thought, this is completely fabricated because, for one, the fear element is so prevalent now. People have lost faith in themselves, their immune system, whatever it is. We talk about the immune system all the time, and for good reason, because society, food and the conditions in our society are so toxic on every level, not just physically, food, the environment, but mentally, spiritually. We're so toxic now because we're not open to possibility. We always see just the laws, the ordinances. We follow the rules. We are captured by dogma. These are things that are so prevalent now. All the negatives that I run away from are now taking over completely into a completely homogenized situation worldwide. Extraordinary, extraordinary. I thought that I would never see this in my lifetime. I understood when Fukushima blew up, we were in very perilous. We started in it was very different from 9/11 from the point of view that the psychology behind 9/11 was really everything. There were people that lost their lives, obviously, and a lot more as a consequence in terms of the aggression and the wars. But I'm thinking Fukushima is something, the invisible enemy, the unreported and unrecognized visible enemy is controlling our lives to such an extent. into the far distant future. This will never leave us. So I understood how absolutely monumental and epic this was, and now the psychological part of it is being added to it. So you have this this enormous epic catastrophe called Fukushima, and other plants will do the same, are doing the same thing. You have this event, this physical event. Now we're supposedly witnessing a physical event like 1918 Spanish flu or the plague or any of that kind of stuff. This is supposedly now in play. But much more importantly is the psychology behind it that creates homogeneity through fear, I suppose, through fear. And whatever the investment is, I don't know the my local lumber yard, the people that work there are highly invested in making me feel I am a danger to them. This is outrageous. This is brutal. And this is what has been given to us in order to attach ourselves to the worst of the worst. We attach ourselves to the worst of the worst in the name of safety and all of this stuff. And I said to some, I said, who do you personally know that has become ill or died? And not a single person I've come across has said, I don't know anyone that's sick or has died. But then those that say, yes, we have, I said, and what do you have to show you that this is in fact true? What kind of test? What kind of testing? The testing doesn't even exist yet. They're pronouncing stuff that we just take up as the from Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus comes and says, yes, we have this and we're working on a vaccine. The vaccine issue now is going to come up, and all the pressure that will be put on us. You see, there it gives it away. The pressure, the fear, the pressure to accept something that hasn't been proven. And these tests are ineffective. In fact, 4 out of 5 people who test positive for this supposed virus are in fact not. So the test doesn't work. But people say, oh yeah, test it. Everything is tested. Yeah, but believe, because it's where is it kind of, it used to be it's written in a newspaper, now it's like on TV, and now it's like comes through the ether, like a voice, the holy of holy voice comes to us in the night while we're dreaming. They're called like presidents and prime ministers who make their appearances and pronounce stuff. They inculcate their message into our brains, I guess, while we're sleeping, and we wake up and say, oh, hallelujah, it has been, the meaning of the universe has been explained and revealed to me. Now I just have to sort of do what it is that I'm told to do. Yeah, okay, fine. You go and do what you're told to do, but the result of it will be, as we're witnessing, the homogeneity, the complete leveling of all activity on earth. It will be like the artists, as always, are the ones going to be rounded up to stop the activity they're doing because it's different from what everybody else is doing. These are my thoughts during this event. And I could easily criticize all the people responsible because there is a whole gaggle, but it makes no difference. It makes no difference because what we have been losing over the last, I don't know, I suppose I could say decades, but it's probably centuries and even millennia, is our that part in us that is inspired, that part in us that is inspired by our own sense of self, by understanding, through the curiosity part of us. This curiosity brings inspiration, and we can be inspired from it. I am inspired by things I see outside myself, the external inspirations. I go and look at a painting by somebody, whether it's contemporary or whether it's historical. I am inspired by what it is that I'm confronted with, and it creates something within myself that is responsive to this fundamental essence that is myself, that I share with others, this feeling within inside me is the only thing that is worth living for, to feel inspired. Now, what do you feel inspired by in this crisis? Surviving, getting through. We'll get through this. There's a great channel you all need to look at. It's Quantum of Conscience. He analyzes this. He misses the whole inspiration side of things, but that's fine. I've sort of passed that. I commented to him. He's not going to come around. He doesn't get it. But he does have a really great sense of self in terms of the crisis or the world as it is not. The world is not what it appears to be. He's understood this beautifully and reveals things to you, to me, about what he understands, not necessarily what the world might actually be, which is my job as an artist. I actually communicate what the world actually could be or is. It's like the spirit of the time idea, the zeitgeist. The great artists have captured the meaning of the time that they live in, or even if they're really amazing, they create the time we're in. Now, Quantum of Conscience, this Matt guy, is great with analyzing. I recommend his channel. And he's a gentle soul. I just like the feel, and he loves cats, and I love cats. So this is my comment. So take what you will from it. It's something I've expressed. I have identified the time we live in as much as I possibly can with words on YouTube. I do it with my paintings much better than I do with my words. I'm not a poet, I'm not a writer, I'm a painter. But I use words because this is something that people seem to have a appreciation for in this medium. I mean, there's such a range. I mean, what I say, the entertainment side of it, it's like so, it's even the crisis is entertaining to people. People gain entertainment value from being told how terrible things are. And what's terrible isn't a virus, and even the Fukushima crisis. What's terrible is the loss of self through the lack of inspiration that people feel. And I know this to exist because inspiration has been replaced very predictably by the fear mechanisms or all the other vices, what are the 7 deadly sins, all those other vices, but now primarily it has been and I'm not saying anything new here. The idea of fear actually creates a very myopic perspective. We cannot think like, if I'm in a flight mode, I'm going to think badly. So the idea of calming ourselves enough and feeling curious about what's really going on and use, I think this is a fabulous opportunity to use something so obvious. And what's obvious is the homogeneity of something. This is not right to our nature. Possibility and differences is what makes us us. So this homogeneity is a red flag that everybody that is doubtful should pick up on this. And to whatever extent you're going to take this, internalize their warnings, this is something that will become much clearer personally as we feel more inspired. In other words, whatever is true about something will become much more real as we feel this inner strength, this self. So look at a painting. Read, if you love words, look at the words that are written that are inspiring. Look for anything inspiring. Look into nature, the colors, whatever it is. You need to feel this inspiration no matter how bad it gets. This has to be part of the language that is the inner language, this internal dialogue that we have, what I call my romance with eternity. It's an internal dialogue because, as Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within. This is the fundamental lesson that I've learned, and especially now that the Fukushima thing has happened now, the psychological part of it is going to be put into place. The physical aspect has been placed. The toxicities have been placed. And now the psychological aspect has to be put into action, and it's being put into action through this crisis. That's what I'm saying. And the reason for this, the intent behind it, yeah, well, this could be another video. I'll just say what my understanding of the intent behind this. You say, okay, if this is orchestrated, and the idea of orchestration doesn't deny, to some extent, I still leave possibilities open, like coincidence, not coincidence, but events occur not always necessarily thought out. And I'm not sure how this number generator is capable of having such complex connection to every cell in this existence. Like every molecule seems to be identified by this number generator. The way Zachary Hubbard or Cat-Eye is talking, this is quite disturbing. The idea of AI, I suppose, is a reference here. That there is a number generator that creates reality, but it doesn't create the reality, at least I hope not, the Matrix idea, that I'm hooked up to a tube or something. I'm not that cynical. I feel that there are elements within myself that I generate that doesn't come from external sources. So this has been put in place for what reason? And the obvious one, whenever you have wars and destruction, you have an elimination of a lot of people. And within the elimination of these people, just imagine that a child is born in all possible possibilities for that entity to expand their consciousness, to open themselves to this cosmic, to this eternity, whatever it is, this mystery that we're part of. Every single life is so precious in terms of how it affects this mystery. And every time we cut this short, that stuff that happens, we are detracted from. So to what extent are these events removing people from this surface, from this experience, from this mystery, will actually begin to deter more and more from our possibilities individually and collectively. And I think this is what's happening. So in order to, this is sort of like I have no illusions about an oligarchy. I mean, they're even represented still in the 21st century, to have kings and queens and Bezos's people that are so enormously wealthy, to isolate themselves into clans of control and power and wealth. I mean, how can anyone not understand this is so arbitrary and contrived? And it's going back a long time. This has existed a long time. How long are we going to allow this to continue in our lives, to accept this? When are we just going to say no to all of this stuff and act accordingly? Well, I've just addressed intent. It's all the activities are there to preserve a way of living, seeing, a way of understanding, a worldview. So the worldview that is being promoted in these events, in these catastrophes, especially psychologically, what is happening is to maintain a certain structure that allows, possibly what I'm going to conclude here is maybe a little bit far-fetched for even me, but this artificial intelligence that appears to be behind generating the world that is not what it appears to be, is kind of a long-term plan for a very specific consciousness amongst us. And I'm not going to identify, or because I can't, because the symbols, you see, the symbols are not, it's kind of like being sick or healthy. It's like a disease manifests symptoms, and the symptom is not the disease. So it's the same way. The oligarchy and the royalty and all that kind of stuff, and the power-hungry guys, they're the symptom. They're not really what's behind this. That's what I think. Well, it's been a long one, but I thought I'd come out. I've left it for quite a while, and you can extrapolate. You can think whatever you would like about this, what we're going through right now. It is epic. It is epic, and it has escalated from March 11, 2011 when Fukushima blew up, this has now progressively gotten worse to the point where psychologically we're now also tied into this epic catastrophic event that happened that most channels that I come across on YouTube have not understood. They've not understood that that was the initiator of the great toxicity that was going to influence life on Earth as we know it for decades, centuries, even millennia. This is what I understand. This is what I believe to be happening. All my best to you, and find the inspiration at any time.